two incidents come to mind. Kids, 10 and 11-year-olds, having a disagreement on their group assignment. I instinctively call out the naughty kid, whose whingy voice is ingrained in my brain, and is the first voice I notice. He jumps up and screams that his group are egotistical assholes who can't even decide on a topic 2 days into their assignment. Was impressed by his vocabulary, but more so that the small amount that had been done on the assignment already was completely his. Still had to send him to the principal. Edit. The other children in the group were punished as well, not just the kid yelling. I was on prac in a class of 7 to 8-year-olds. A pair of girls gave me a drawing and said I was really pretty. Another girl who seemed to be from a lower class family compared to her classmates and had learning delays heard this and came up to me saying I don't think you are pretty. I was taken aback, but kids are kids and don't always have filters. She saw the look on my face and followed up quickly saying I think you are kind and smart. Being pretty doesn't matter. Girls can be more than pretty. Are you going to stay as our teacher forever? And that was the moment I knew this profession was for me. I teach life skills to kids. I have to give a pre and post test to the kids every year. I personally think it's extremely poorly written, and kids usually struggle, because it was obviously made by someone who doesn't work with kids. I help them through it as much as possible without giving the answers it's all true/false. A lot of the questions use logical fallacies such as saying most people my age, which again, is too high level. One 4th grade kid, who is very smart and a little impulsive, raised his hand and said miss, isn't that a matter of opinion? I about fell over. I wouldn't use the word stupid to describe this student, but I had this girl 1 year as a student teacher and then a 2nd year when I landed my first teaching job. She was autistic and struggled to get her work done and make friends. She was also bilingual. One day during class she started interpreting a video in real time. It was amazing. Interpretation like that is extremely difficult, but she was able to do it like it was nothing. Sadly, she passed away the next year, but she will always have a special place in my heart. There was this dumbass kid in my biological themes in film class who would always try to crack jokes and didn't get any of the deeper themes of the movies we watched. However, when I showed them Lorenzo's Oil and I remarked how the parents were just trying to make sure the child was as comfortable as possible before he died, said student replied, "Isn't that how everyone lives?" I had to take a second to think about how strangely deep that was coming from this class clown. He then went on to state he didn't actually know the occupation of the father in the movie, so it kinda ruined the moment, but that stuck with me. I'm a ski instructor and IDK, if this even counts, but I had a student who was having a lot of trouble stopping using the usual way we teach them, the pizza you make a wedge with your skis and dig your edges in, and their parent insisted that they still go up the big lift. So I had to oblige anyways. We got to the top of the hill, and, of course, he couldn't stop, so I skated down faster than he was going and caught him. The rest of the class caught up, and we got to talking about midway through what I was teaching them. I got to talking about turns and stopping using gravity, and he asked if he could try something. I said yes, with much hesitance, and went down the hill expecting to have to catch him, at which point he comes down and executes a perfect hockey stop, turning sideways to the hill and skidding to a stop. He didn't exactly say anything, but I figured I might as well share my story. I had a set of twins in my class one time. I knew them from around school, but I didn't know there were two of them. I just thought there was one who was really fast, or whatever. So on the first day I'm calling roll, and I see two similar names with the same last name, and call the first one. Girl says she's here. I ask if there are two of her. No, there's one of me. But I do have a twin. Also another time a student said, it's easy to sound the smartest when you're the only one talking. Not sure why that one stuck with me. One day a pretty bad kid was actually putting forth some effort in math, so I thought. He raised his hand because he was stuck, so I helped him in the same manner I help all my students, guiding them towards the answer while not giving the answer. After I helped him, a few minutes passed, and he was really excited and said, Mr. H, I got the answer. I said -17, and he said, yeah, now I got the answer. He proceeded to never let me live down the fact that he finished me out of that answer for the rest of the year. There was a boy named Justin in my history class. He loved to flirt with other girls and do dumb stuff with his friends. He got terrible grades. He has to repeat the grade that year. I assigned the class a project about WW1. Justin made a one-paper report, and as I was reading it, I was prepared for jokes and off-topic subjects. As I read it, it had no jokes or spelling errors. He compared WW1 to a video game called Battlefield, and how the developers forgot to add significant things, and he cited the things they forgot to add. I pieced together that he was paying attention. He wasn't getting good test scores because he just didn't feel like it. He just needed something to compare the subject to, or an opened response question. After I graded it, I talked with him the next day and told him I understood what he needed to learn, and for the rest of the year he got decent grades. But since it was almost summer at that point, he had to repeat the grade, but he got all A's the next year because I told my fellow employees what he needed to have to learn correctly. He now works as a lawyer in a big city, who would have thought one report could change someone learning entirely. The student I work with is incredibly clever. He is autistic and at about a first grade level. We are working on sight words and reading, and he'd stare at the word for a few seconds, then at me. I'd sound it out for him, and then he'd say it. It started happening way more often with words he definitely knew, so I made him start sounding them out alone repeatedly until he figured out the word. After 2 days of this, I said sound it out, and he actually rolled his eyes and said the word. He'd just been lazy and wanting me to do it for him. Since then I've found a lot of things he's capable of, but people underestimate him and do it for him, so he's gotten stubborn and lazy. I had a student in 2nd grade, 8 years old, who would constantly act up, not complete work, and was physically violent with the other kids. He had a sister who was 4 and had some serious medical issues, and when she was in the hospital he'd be really bad. Well, there was a 3-month stint where he kept acting worse and worse, culminating in picking on a kid with a broken arm and smashing that kid's face into the edge of a table, busting his lip. After parent conferences, one-on-one talks, and counselors, I sat down alone with the kid again, on a good day, and asked him why. Why was he hurting other kids? Why wouldn't he do his work? He was incredibly smart and knew how to do the work. Why was he having such a hard time doing what was expected of him? He broke down. His parents had opened a coffee shop. His sister was sick, and he felt alone. Mom and dad were working. Grandma was with his sister. He liked spending time with me and the principal, but didn't know how to ask for that time without being in trouble. Seeing such a young kid cry and tell you they just miss their mom and dad is heartbreaking. I ended up eating my lunch with him 2 to 3 times a week and put his desk near mine so he didn't feel alone. I also dragged his parents in for another meeting and told them what he had said. We all cried at that. Sadly, it seems like they only spent time with him occasionally after that because he reverted the next school year and ended up getting kicked out for hurting other students. The parents felt that their business was more important than their son. It breaks my heart every time I think about him. So I was teaching a class that were studying to help people with disabilities, addictions, or even in prison. They'd help those people become more independent and support them with things they couldn't do. The first year these students started at a facility focused on people with several disabilities. These people all had mental and physical disabilities and are unable to live without help. So my stupidest student is a student who isn't very smart academically. He has concentration issues and is easily distracted. What might seem easy to understand for us wasn't for him because he couldn't keep his head in one place. At the beginning of the year he said he didn't want to work with this group of clients, but he had to. In the end he became to appreciate the work and actually had a great connection with the clients, even if he only complained in class about having to clean poop. He worked at the farm part of the facility, but what he said at the end of the trial will stick with me forever because of the difficulty this work has. This student said, "If you can work with these people, you can work with anyone." He said this because he knew how difficult the work is, but also because he came to appreciate his clients and learned how to understand nonverbal communication, which he wasn't really aware of before. The work he and his classmates choose is difficult because they had to have endurance, patience, they'd have to be able to care for people, but also be strict. And he managed to kind of capture it in one sentence. Unfortunately it was only an internship, and I had to let these students go after a year, but I'm grateful I got to see them grow and see them learn to understand the field they choose. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more daily 6 PM Reddit uploads.